Chapter 1. The 2024 Elections and the Onset of Crisis. The 2024 U.S. presidential elections were fiercely contested between Donald Trump and the Democratic Party candidate. However, when the results were announced, Trump refused to concede. His supporters organized protests nationwide, contested election results in several states, and plunged the country into chaos. This instability in the U.S. had global repercussions. Countries like Russia and China saw America's internal division as a sign of weakness and accelerated their geopolitical maneuvers. The European Union began reassessing its relationship with the U.S. Chapter 2, Economic Collapse and Global Impacts. With Trump's defeat, a significant portion of the Republican base launched massive protests against the new administration. The internal turmoil in the U.S. wreaked havoc on the stock markets. Inflation rates soared, the dollar rapidly depreciated, and investors sought safer assets. The economic crisis in the U.S. triggered a domino effect worldwide. European economies also suffered from the uncertainty. China and Russia took advantage of the dollar's decline by promoting their own currencies in international trade. Chapter 3. NATO division and Russia's expansion. The political turmoil in the U.S. weakened NATO. European nations, sensing America's declining global leadership, began formulating independent military strategies. Countries like Germany and France accelerated efforts to establish a European army separate from NATO. Russia benefited the most from this situation. The war in Ukraine took a dramatic turn. As U.S. support dwindled, Ukraine lost ground, and Russia expanded its influence in Eastern Europe. The Baltic states grew increasingly anxious, questioning whether NATO could genuinely protect them. Chapter 4. The China-Taiwan Crisis. While the U.S. was entangled in internal crises, China adopted a more aggressive stance toward Taiwan. With a weakened U.S. military presence in the region, China intensified its blockade of Taiwan by deploying a massive naval and air force presence. The U.S. government struggled to respond decisively due to the domestic chaos and economic downturn, making military intervention a risky option. Allies like Japan and South Korea grew concerned and began strengthening their own defenses independently. Chapter 5. Was the U.S. on the brink of civil war? Trump's refusal to concede and his mobilization of supporters further escalated internal conflicts. Armed militias emerged in several states. Local governments started resisting federal authorities. In conservative states like Texas and Florida, secessionist movements gained momentum. The U.S. federal government was forced to take harsh measures. However, the nation's polarization deepened by the day, increasing the likelihood of a civil war. Chapter 6. Shifting power in the Middle East. As the U.S. withdrew from the global stage, a power vacuum emerged in the Middle East. Israel sought to expand its regional influence, while Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey took advantage of America's weakened position to advance their geopolitical agendas. Tensions between Israel and Iran escalated to the brink of open conflict. With the U.S. unable to mediate, the region descended into further chaos. Meanwhile, Turkey, seeing NATO's decline, revised its military strategies and accelerated its efforts to become a regional power. Chapter 7. The New World Order. Trump's defeat and America's descent into near-civil war fundamentally reshaped the global power balance. China and Russia assumed greater leadership roles, while Europe moved towards forming an independent military and economic bloc. The power dynamics in the Middle East and Asia shifted, leading to new alliances. Ultimately, Trump's loss did not just affect the U.S. It triggered a series of crises and transformations that reshaped the entire world. The world was no longer the same. A new era had begun.